What's your never again story? Story 1. Once I made two terrible food decisions in a single day. This was years ago when I was in my middle 20s. I woke up hungry and went to the fridge to grab some leftover Taco Bell, but I'd accidentally forgotten it in the car overnight. Still, I thought if I microwaved it, it'd be fine. So I ate a Taco Bell chicken quesadilla that had been sitting out for over 20 hours. Just as I was finishing it up, my buddy called and begged me to join him on a just friends hang session with this girl he was trying to date. They wanted to go to this Asian seafood place I'd always seen driving by, but never been to. So we go, and they have a kind of mini seafood super platter that's meant to feed the whole table, like a super sampler. We get that. It's supposed to feed 6, but we finish it off as a party of 4. That afternoon, it began. My friend called and asked if I was feeling bad from the seafood, and I told him yeah, but it was probably something from earlier in the day for me. He said, "Yeah, we are feeling a little queasy too, but we've got tickets tonight, so we're just gonna drink water and go for it. I got a date at whoa." I wished him luck and went back to Fallout 3. By midnight, I thought I was going to turn inside out. It was so bad, I would have called 911 if my phone had been in the bathroom with me, but it was on my nightstand and I physically could not get to it. I could hear it ringing occasionally, so I hoped that whoever was trying to call would stop by and take me to the hospital. It was the longest night of my life. But by early afternoon the next day I was coming around. I tried to stay hydrated by letting shower water run into my mouth during the event. The toilet was right next to the tub, and I could sit and hang my head into the tub at the same time under the shower head. So I just ran the shower on my head, crapped my guts out the back, and vomited my soul out the front. Turns out the calls late at night were my buddy, calling to come pick them up because they had both had accidents at the concert on their first date. They are married now. This was before Uber or Lyft, in case anyone is wondering. They finally managed to get his uncle to get them. Never. Again. Story 2. I've told this story before, and it's probably not the type of story you were expecting, but it fits the question, so here you go. Also, this requires a bit of backstory. When my wife and I first got together, we lived in a tiny apartment and shared a twin bed. This situation continued even after she got pregnant. This, of course, substantially reduced my sleeping area. We slept in a spooning position. One night, when she was about 7 months pregnant, I awoke in the middle of the night and tried to readjust the blanket to recover myself. It often would end up bunched up between us, so I reached down to find it and pulled it back up. There was some resistance, but I assumed that she had her foot on it or something. So I pulled harder and kept pulling, assuming it would come free any second now. At this point, my wife turned her head around and angrily asked what the fuck I was doing. Turned out that I was not pulling the blanket. I had grabbed the back of her underwear and was forcefully pulling them up her scrack. I broke out laughing and couldn't stop for quite a while. She was substantially less amused and even less so after my explanation. So the mistake I will never make again is: never tell an angry, rudely awoken pregnant woman that you mistook her underwear for a blanket, especially if you're laughing hysterically at the time. Story 3. Being young and stupid enough to drink whatever mixed drinks my friends were handing me at the bar when I was in college. This was about 8 years ago, and I was probably 22 at the time. Before this, I had only ever really had beer. My friend knew the bartender at the place we were hanging out. She was making the drinks way too strong. I remember one of the last drinks I had that night was called Adios Motherfucker. After we left the bar, I'm told I refused to stick with the group and ended up walking a few miles to the other side of town because I'm a complete idiot. At some point I realized I was super drunk and literally called the police on myself because I was sick, puking, and lost. They ended up calling an ambulance. I had no insurance at the time and it cost me $600. Apparently when you're that drunk the police won't just take you home. Didn't expect that and paid the price. I woke up in the hallway of the hospital, sprawled out on a gurney the following morning. I had puked on my shirt, so at some point they had put me in a hospital gown. Eventually, hospital staff realized I was up and moving around. They were all excited because apparently they had some sort of bet for how long I was going to be passed out. They handed me a pamphlet about the dangers of binge drinking, and I was out the door. I walked 1.5 miles back to my house with my hospital attire blowing in the breeze. I had to stop puking twice. The funniest part about this lovely walk home was that it was smack in the middle of all the student housing by my college. I had long hair at the time, and it was all greasy and crazy. My appearance was a mix between an escaped mental patient / infected by zombie virus, but hadn't yet fully turned. The looks I was getting from people I passed on the sidewalk were priceless, and even in my terribly ill state, I had a few laughs at myself for how ridiculous this ordeal was. I managed to get home to take a shower and sleep for a couple of hours before having to go to work at Jimmy John's as a delivery driver. Story 4. Never again will I engage in any sort of eating race. About 10 years back, I worked for Walmart, and my coworker and I would always take breaks together. I think he and I were in a constant unspoken competition to be the weirdest Walmart employee. We both wore fake name tags, and we used the paging system inappropriately. But all in all, we were hard workers, so our bosses never got onto us. Well, one day in the break room, we decided to have a race that involved eating a cinnamon roll and chasing it with a cup full of maple syrup. We had a small audience for the event. We were sitting across the table from each other when someone said go, and before I could even unwrap my cinnamon roll, he slammed down his cup of maple syrup. I asked him, "How did you eat that so fast?" He said, "I just swallowed it whole." I demanded a rematch and bought him another cinnamon roll from the vending machine. This time, I was determined to win. Someone said go, and I shoved the cinnamon roll in the back of my mouth, grabbed the syrup and swallowed. But I didn't swallow. I inhaled the cinnamon roll into my esophagus and began choking. Everyone was laughing until I leaped up from the table, causing one whole side of the table to collapse, spilling multiple people's lunches onto the floor. Then I heard someone say, "Dude, she's choking." I pointed at that guy and vigorously shook my head as I stumbled around the break room, making the international sign for choking. I remember people saying, "Do something. Does anyone know the Heimlich?" No one was helping. They were just all in shock, watching me frantically hit myself repeatedly in the chest. It was then I decided to run as fast as I could into a counter and ram my rib cage. Then I just grabbed the edge of the sink and repeatedly used my arms to pull my chest to the counter and ram my ribs. After about 3 times, I spun around and a fist-sized cinnamon roll bullet shot out of my throat and splattered on the floor like a snowball. I took the biggest breath of air into my lungs after about a full minute of choking, and my coworker said, "You totally lost." The choking incident in the break room was all the talk around work for some time, and the fact that I high-kicked a table in half and wrecked about 4 people's lunches. Story 5. I don't eat food that was shared in the common area at work anymore. I ate a jelly donut at work on a Friday, thinking someone brought them in that morning. Nope. Found out later they had been around for a couple days. Explains the staleness. Just thought it was a shitty brand of donut. I started getting the rumbles down under around 530 pounds, and by 6, I was trapped in the bathroom at work, crying as I tried to figure out how to get home between insistent diarrhea at 5 to 10-minute intervals. I had to take 1 PT train, plus 1 subway ride. Couldn't Uber home either, didn't want to be stuck in a tunnel, ya know. Almost made it. I was 3 stops from home, sweating profusely and pale as a sheet, when some little kid opened a juice box that smelled like sickeningly sweet fake fruit. I clamped my mouth and managed to get out of the subway car before showering everything in a 3-foot radius with my lunch and 3-day-old jelly donut from hell. No one checked on me because they assumed I was just already drunk and sloppy, considering it was a Friday evening. I get food poisoning 1 to 2 times a year because I hang loose with refrigeration of leftovers and eat at places with less than stellar city health grades / food trucks. But that was the worst to date. Haven't had donuts since either. Story 6. I will never have pizza and soda more than once a day ever again. This new life rule was prompted by an event that took place after I began some new medication. I was prescribed Vyvanse for ADHD. Much like other ADHD medications, Vyvanse is a stimulant. A common side effect of stimulants is dehydration. I've been drinking more water to compensate for this since I started. But things changed when my girlfriend was leaving town to visit family for a couple of days. I'd had the entire week off of work as well, so I decided I was going to enjoy it as much as possible. I was going to do what most men do when their so is gone for an extended period of time. Try to be the laziest human being in existence. For me, this meant playing video games and eating nothing but fast food. In particular, I ordered a couple pizzas and 2-liter sodas to get me through the week. Things were looking good for the first 2 days. I wake up on day 3, proceeding to resume my lackadaisical activities. I sit in my computer chair and immediately notice some pain in my testicles, as if I'd taken some impact on them. But nothing of the sort had happened. Over the next several minutes, the pain continued to grow in intensity. It became so bad that my body was entering crisis mode. I was sweating, my heart was racing, muscles shaking. I was panicking. I had no idea what the hell was happening to me. This was going on for so long without any perceivable explanation that I hastily got dressed and drove straight to the ER. The hospital was just down the road from me, so I figured if I passed out from the pain, I'd at least be close by. As I get inside, I'm asked to fill out a form. This turned out to be a rather difficult task to complete, while feeling as though my genitals were about to explode. Seconds later, my legs gave out. This was the signal that the ER staff needed to provide immediate attention. Apparently, the pain requests and profuse sweating wasn't enough to convince them of that. I was sat in a wheelchair and taken to a room and given an IV drip. An X-ray and 1 urine test later, I was told that they suspected that I had kidney stones, even though they never found one in the X-ray. This would later turn out to be completely false. But I'll get to that later. I was prescribed a few pain medications, including Percocet, and sent on my way. On day 4, being the deviant ruffian I was, I decided to try one of the Percocet pills, despite not having any pain at the time. Interestingly, I was surprised to notice that hours after taking it, I felt nothing. I found this quite odd, but it made much more sense to me later. The next morning, I was supposed to pick my girlfriend up from the airport. Unfortunately, as I woke up, I quickly realized that I'm about to vomit everything I'd eaten since yesterday. Fortunately, my roommate offered to pick her up for me. A few minutes after she leaves, I'm hanging over my toilet. So let's analyze everything. I've binged on nothing but pizza and soda. I'm on medication that dries out my system. The Percocet I took never metabolized in my body. It clicked for me. I never had a kidney stone, because I was so dehydrated from the soda and medication, and I'd had an enormous amount of cheese, further blocking my digestion tract. I was massively constipated, so much that it was causing the pain to radiate into my testicles, and prevented anything I'd eaten from making it past my stomach, including the Percocet. Massive testicular pain, projectile vomiting, and $1,100 in ER bills can make a good lesson that only needs to be taught once to be way more responsible with my body and not be so callously impulsive.